Welcome. First People Over Politics in the new year. We have a very special guest, a new guest, as always, coming from a different area. We like to bring people in from different areas, get different perspectives. So thanks for joining us today, Miss West.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and Eva West. I met her. I would say on Instagram, as many other people in the cannabis ecosystem, as I've met many other people in the cannabis ecosystem. But for people who aren't familiar with you, tell them a little bit about you and what you do.
Well, I began my cannabis journey. Actually, I was living in Houston, and I wanted to move to LA. I'm getting my master's right now in clinical psychology, clinical therapy. I wanted to be a therapist here, but I wanted to hustle out here. My goal when I moved here is to be working in legal cannabis. Actually wanted to be a delivery driver. And so when I got here, 3 days after I actually came here, I became a delivery driver. I was making really good money. Like I would be working like 70-hour weeks, and I could pay like $1,800 a week. So I got on my feet real quick with that. But with that being said, the company that I was working for went under. And but in the midst of that happening, THC Design actually reached out to me for me to be a brand ambassador for them. So I began that journey in April of this year, and it's amazing. Like everything in cannabis is amazing. I learned a lot in a short period of time because of all the work that I've done in cannabis. I had a lot of clients or customers or whatever asking me different, like my opinion on different things or whatever. So I was like, well, I might as well just, show everybody what I'd be smoking or whatever, and give them how I feel about it and stuff. So that's how I got here, and I'm
Okay.
in the dispensary at least 3 times a week.
Okay. Okay. And so you're definitely a brand ambassador. Are you a patient as well? Does it help you on a daily?
Oh, for sure. A lot of people, I don't know if they're aware of this or not, but a lot of people self medicate with THC. I know that
Mm.
I did it purposely. The medications are supposed to be on, for anxiety and stuff. I don't like it because the way it made me feel. So I just decided to just do cannabis, and it really calms me. So that's the most reason why I do it anyway.
For
It's my
sure.
self help. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, and so you're living in Cali now, but you're from Louisiana, right? And so
Yeah.
Louisiana still has some ways to go with their cannabis laws. They have medicinal, right? And they
Yes.
have decriminalization in some areas.
Yeah, so a couple of years back, they made it to where you can have, I think, up to like an eighth on your person, and you'll just get a ticket if you get pulled over and they see it in your car or whatever. And then they made it medical with marijuana, but it's still like not really medical. It's more CBD because like I just went back home, and I was like, okay, yeah, y'all got medical. I'm gonna get my license and just go try to find a dispensary. And like, oh, they only have CBD dispensaries. And it's funny because like they'll be smoking on like Delta 9, and they be like, oh, it get me high. I'm like, Delta 9 getting you high?
Mm,
So yeah, they got a ways to go. Um, but they making strides to it, which I didn't even realize they would even do because it's such a conservative area. Just like Texas, I
sure.
thought that would never be like even medicinal, but that's the wave right now because that's where you're getting trying to get that tax money.
For sure. I mean, one of the things that I would believe, right, in like Louisiana, for one, land is so cheap. They have a lot of uh, places where you could in fact grow and cultivate, right? So if you guys were on the right side of things, you guys could be one of the great states to cultivate. At least I would think, for,
I think that the climate that we have would definitely produce really good bud, but also maybe it could be harmful too because from my understanding, whenever you're growing, like the winter months are kind of important too, because like sometimes the cold makes the flower, bud kind of better when it's growing. It doesn't really get very cold out there, but like maybe once or twice a year, maybe like around I'll say Easter time, like Mardi Gras time, and maybe January they have the cold. It's like the coldest months, but other than that, it's hot. It was 80 degrees when I went out there the other day, so I'm just like,
I understood. So it could be good, but it also could be some dangerous weather conditions
oh, for sure.
cultivation. Understood. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you was I haven't been to California. I haven't been in California some years, right? And I know that the landscape has changed. One of the things that I know is like people say commonly is like the taxes, right? So like cannabis, of course, that is regulated, costs too much in cannabis.
Oh,
Can you speak to this, or what's going on out there? What's the word on the
that's
ground?
see, that's the thing. Like people, like it's hard because it like seeing the climate that cannabis is in right now. You have people like their belief system, especially if they're not in the industry, is that, oh, you have legal cannabis, you're making so much money, right? That's not the case. Right now, a lot of the dispensaries, a lot of grows are actually closing down because of low sales, and mostly because like if you want a really good eighth of some gas, like not mids, not lows, but some gas, it's gonna be at least $45 for the eighth, and then the taxes on cannabis is 35%. So it's kind of like you're buying it twice,
35.
you're only getting 1/8. And with legal cannabis in California, I'm not sure about anywhere else, but the majority of what's sold as far as in flower in those dispensaries are only eighths. Like they'll have like half a zip or a whole zip, but normally when you go into a dispensary that have a zip, it's not good weed. It's sun grown.
Mm.
It's lows or whatever, and they'll sell it to you for like $130. If you want a good zip, you have to purchase all the eighths together, and that can come out to like $350 or something like that.
Okay. And so wait, I just wanna capitalize. Are you saying you can't get any good sun grown? Because I don't know if that's
No, I'm not
necessarily.
gonna say that. I'm not
I don't
gonna
know
say
if
you
that's
can't get
necessarily-
this sun grown, but
Okay, okay.
it's kind of like taboo out here. Like the first thing people ask as soon as they hit the shop is it indoor? I think it's because of the reputation of it, also the aesthetics of it. When you have sun grown flower, like connected is one of the biggest I guess top shelf companies. Their apes go for about $60, in some places 50, in others. And they have a sun grown and they have like a smalls. So sun grown, is grown outside, it's outdoor, and then they have the smalls of the indoor. Smalls are like micro popcorn buds, and they'll sell that for like a discounted price, like a
Cool.
7 or whatever.
But
That's
sometimes those smalls, there's value in those smalls because those condensed buds have that all that THC in there. You know,
yeah, but people
but
are
it
like,
is annoying. It is annoying. You do want those nice nugs.
no, but it's aesthetics though. People out here like they care about the aesthetics about their weed. Like it can even smell like trash. They're gonna love it if it has a good nose, it has a good look to it. But with the sun grown, people don't really like to smoke that because it's sun bleached. And so it looks sometimes brownish tint
Right.
to it. And nobody wants brown looking weed. It could
You're
be
right.
fire ass weed. It could give you a good high and everything. No one's gonna touch it. Not here. Because everybody's into aesthetics out here, especially with the weed.
Hmm. I could see it being like cannabis snob since you guys have been on top of the game for so long.
Definitely. Definitely. But you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah.
When I'm doing PADs, or which are patient appreciation days at different dispensaries, um, the majority of the people that are paying for cannabis, they're not getting top shelf. They're getting lows. Like they'll get an eighth that's $25. And like
they're cost efficient buyers. That's what I told my friend. You know, the other day. The terminology is cost efficient. They're cost efficient.
I'm calling them cheap because
True.
you get what you pay for. Like you
Right.
seriously get what you pay for. And it like for me, it gives me a headache. Like I have to have a certain grade of weed for it not to give me a headache. A lot of times those companies that sell the discounted flour or budget friendly flour, what they do is it's like it like it just doesn't taste right. Like it
No,
has more
I agree.
pesticides.
Trust me, I'm not gonna argue you on that. Like sometimes you get what you pay for, right? But I will also say that there's sometimes where you're paying for a name or you're paying for something you believe to be, you know, the highest quality, right? Like it has high THC content, as it says, right? But it
Well,
has no terps. It has no terps, right? And so I've been there where, you know, I hit it and it gave me a headache. You know what I mean? And you know, it didn't even last for, you know, that long. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't a very full spectrum of balance feeling. And so like, you know, I've had both spectrums. You know, I've had cookies. I believe cookies is like the hype beast of the cannabis industry. You know what I mean? Like,
well, you know,
not to say I don't like my fair share sometimes, but you know, still definitely the hype beast.
it a lot of these brands are hype. Like they'll sell you a $80 eighth. It's big fluffy. It has a lot of trichomes on it, so it's really icy, and people will swear behind it, right? But it's hype because a lot of times they're all like gelatos or what is it? I can't remember the term, but it
The OG, all gelato, the
oh,
OG.
yeah, OGs or whatever. I mean, I guess it's hard to really find some gassy stuff that is gonna smoke good. You're gonna get a good price for it, and it's gonna look good. Cookies, they are notorious. Like people love cookies because it's like a national brand now almost. So when you think about cannabis in LA, you think about cookies. You want to go to the cookie store. However, like it's really overrated. Like for a person that is really a smoker, they really they really know their weed because they've been smoking it for so long. They'll go to a cookies and get it, and they'll be like, "Oh, it was all right. I wouldn't buy it again." You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Not to hate on cookies, but I've had that similar. I've had that similar experience. You know, but I definitely want to come out to Colorado. I mean to California. I went to Colorado. They have 1,000+ dispensaries, medical and recreational. You know, how many would you presume or estimate that the state of California has?
Ah, it has to be a lot. Like I literally, or probably since I've begun in April, I probably hit 100 shops, and that's just in LA and in the Valley area. So with that being said, you know, it could be a whole bunch, but then you still have areas in California where they won't allow you to have a dispensary. Like
Sure.
you have to like I actually had to do a campaign for this one dispensary. They wanted us to help them campaign because they're trying to open up some shops around Redondo Beach, and that's like Redondo Beach is like where all the rich people live at, and it's the
Yeah.
beach area.
I
And
understand.
they have a certain aesthetic they want to keep to, and they don't want dispensaries in their area, so they just don't have any.
Hmm. Well, we have an area called Ocean City, and that's going to be interesting, of course, with recreational, because you know there's people who come from all over to vacation in Ocean City, so that's definitely going to be interesting, and you know how they further regulate that area. So I would say if you guys have 100 just in that LA area, you guys definitely have 1,000+ in the
Yeah,
entire state. Um,
sure.
do you visit both medical and the recreational shops, or you know what type
Well,
of do you really stay in?
most of the shops are all recreational now. Like they don't. I haven't even ever been to a only a medical shop. It's about the same. Like it's the same thing. The only difference between medical and recreational right now is that you need a card for medical, and not one of those bullshit ones that you can get off the internet. The ones where you have to get diagnosed by a doctor and they write you a prescription, and that way you can get up to like 8 ounces, and you also get all your taxes except for like
8 ounces.
state tax.
And
Yeah,
you said you get what about the? You said you get it.
you
You
get
don't.
tax break.
No, you're non-taxed.
Yeah,
You're not.
well, it's a tax break. Like I think you have to pay one tax. It might be like a city tax or something like that. But the majority of it, I think it's you only may have to pay 10% taxes or something like that. So it's very like it's a lot cheaper. It's more cost efficient if you have one. You
And
know,
so, just humor me if you know what is the initial cost to become a patient. You know, in Maryland is $50. I think it was dropped down to 25 recently, and then to go to the doctor, it ranges anywhere from I've seen 125 to 250. You know, 300 really. So what would be the cost to become, a patient
a patient for you to
in
get your
California if you want to be a
I don't
medical patient?
we don't I don't think we have that. It's just like you just have to go to the doctor, and you can get like even your primary care physician can prescribe you cannabis. So most of the times you can just go through your insurance or whatever. But as far as paying for it, you have to pay for it out of pocket, because I don't think any of your insurance is going to cover that. But as
Okay,
far
yeah.
as having to pay to be a patient, you don't have to do that out here.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Mhm.
cool. Because they made it a minimal cost. Now it's only 25, so it's very minimal. And I think for veterans, it's free. Uh,
Okay.
really. Well, I mean, you guys are always on the forefront of like not only cannabis but legislation. And so, if you know Maryland, we became the 20th state to go recreational. Very excited about that. I was very did a lot of work, very instrumental in the Yes on 4 campaign. And so, as Maryland goes recreational, what are some, what are some things that you would tell us to watch out for? What are some things that you would tell us, to do moving forward that you recommend? Because of course, you're now working in a state that has been recreational for quite some time, and a lot of times we look at California as the leaders, in cannabis, in a lot of regards. So, what are some things that you would recommend we look out for, and I
As
guess
as consumers or as a brand?
I would say, as the for as a the market as a whole. Like what are some things some equity things that we should ask for, right? And from a consumer standpoint,
Uh,
yeah, as
well,
well.
you have to the thing that I would look out for the most is being price efficient, and not growing too fast. Getting a lot of companies that are social equity, because they're gonna give you you're gonna get the best prices with them. I think a lot of times, right, and what's happening right now with the way cannabis is right now, um, a lot of shops are going out of business because of inflation. So I like to tell people, whenever the cannabis industry is very fickle, especially legal cannabis in California. Legal cannabis only accounts for 20% of the actual cannabis sales. 80% of the market is still illegal. If it wasn't the illegal market, there would be no legal market of cannabis in California. With that being said, a lot of times companies they will have these gigantic numbers for their flower, and then on top of that, then you have to worry about taxes. And what happens is like it's like buyer's remorse or whatever, because then you go in for that first time and get that eighth or whatever, and you're gonna pay $75 for it, and then whenever the consumer, after they smoke it and it's time for them to buy some more, and it was like, well, it wasn't worth that much. So you'll have an influx of customers at first, but then after that initial, of buying it and going, recreation and buying, they're not going to want to spend that much no more. And so you lose a lot of business that way. Also growing too fast. So one of the things that really harmed, it's really harming a lot of people, is that they'll have periods of growth. So they'll have a whole bunch of customers spending a whole bunch of money at one time of the year. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I'll say it's beginning of summer. And so you have all these customers coming and buying weed. You're accounting for tourism and people just wanting to buy weed because it's there in LA or whatever. And then what happens is, they're like, oh, we going up, making a lot of money. So what they'll do is they'll open another shop, and then they'll open another shop. And then when it slows down, because when cannabis slows down, it slows all the way down. So what ended up happening is it slows down, and now you're stuck with 3 stores, and you can't afford to keep them open anymore. So, I would just say, be cautious with the growth.
Okay.
Be conscientious about the price points of the flower, because you still have to understand that the consumer still has to pay for taxes. So you want to make it affordable, but you also want to make it, good enough to where the dispensaries are actually still making money. And you have to, because this is how it goes. So I'm gonna give you an example. My company, our wholesale price, I'm just gonna like random ballpark. Let's say our wholesale price is $17 for an eighth. A dispensary will buy that eighth, at the premium at $17. And then they will put it like up to 300% markup on it. So they'll make it $75 for the eighth.
Wow.
And you have to pay 30 for the 35 for the taxes. So somebody's gonna actually walk out the door with $100 eighth, and then they're gonna have to come back in about 2 days once it's gone. Nobody want to keep doing that. Also,
so that's expensive. That's pricey. That's pricey for your medicine, right?
Yeah, but I mean, what us as companies do to kind of like offset that a little bit is that we'll go do patient appreciation days, and we'll give them promotional items, like maybe 2 grams if you buy if you buy your eighth or whatever. So that means, so you're getting like 5 grams for the same price that you would pay for an eighth. But that still is not good enough for people. You know what I mean? It's not worth it. I mean, I would not pay that much. I don't want to pay that much. So like, if you don't inflate it so much, like, I know with cannabis, I know weed costs. It doesn't even cost that much to grow it. Like, why would you mark it up 200-300%? There's no, like, that's being greedy. You know what I'm saying? If you're paying $18, I mean, if you're paying $17 for the eighth wholesale, then why not just charge $40?
Yeah, we're still making profit.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what a lot of companies do. They do that, and they and then they don't have good variety. What I mean by variety is, like, not everybody wants top shelf flower. You don't have to always smoke top shelf flower. You can have a good mid. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So some people love the mid. Where's the mid, right? Some people love the mids, right?
Yeah, well, a good shop will have lows, they will have mids, and they also have top shelf. And with top shelf, a lot of the top shelf brands, they still sell like affordable flower. It'll just be smalls, or it'll be outdoor,
or it'll be shake, or it'll be the shake and trim. Like, a little shake and trim. Like, hey, if you have some hard times, the shake and trim might get you through. I understand.
Yeah. So yeah, you have to make sure you have all that stuff so that you can hit every customer what they want and what they need. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. Well, I mean, you brought some great perspective, right? Don't grow too fast, and then also be price cautious. of the customer, right? Because at the end of the day, you should be understanding it's a business, but your customer is the consumer. So of course, be conscientious of them. And so I wanted to ask you a few quick questions. If you ever seen the show, it's just a couple rapid questions, not as serious, as before. And so the first question I'll ask you, what do you think the best method of growing is? Of course, we talked about sun grown. We know hydroponically,
No.
um, many other ways.
So
What's the best method?
the best method, and it's really expensive, so people really don't do it, is living soil.
Ooh, I love. Oh, yes, I know. I love some organic living soil.
Living
Yes.
soil, and that's the hype right now. Actually, I have people coming from different states requesting living soil, and not a lot of companies in LA do it. I actually, I one of my
It's
coworkers
expensive. It's
is
time consuming.
huh?
It's
What you say?
expensive and time consuming.
It is, but I'm gonna
But
tell you how somebody told me. I'm gonna
quality,
tell you, it's
crazy. It's
quality.
crazy.
It's quality, but I'm gonna tell you how somebody told me. Right, so they'll have a living soil grown flower, right, and then the percentage of the THC might only be like 12%, right? So when you first look at the bag and you see the THC content is just 12%, you're like, I don't know, that shit trash. If you
Yeah.
smoke that shit, when you smoke that shit, you're not going to be able to finish it. You're not
Okay. 10%, 10, 12%. Okay. Okay.
It's not about the THC potency. It's more about what's in it. Does it have CBD? Does it have THCA? Does it have ziltonine? Does it, because all those
So you guys
components,
don't have the tip profiles. How do you guys, how do we know?
because we with THC Design, I know you're probably not familiar with our brand, but
Okay.
on our packaging, I have some right here. I just opened it the other day. On our packaging, it has the top 3 terpenes that are tested on the
Respect. Okay. Yeah,
packaging.
I wasn't aware.
Yeah,
Okay.
so basically, we're one of the only companies or the first company to do that. It tells you the 3 top terpene profiles in it. It also gives you a breakdown on the box of how much CBD is in it, how much THCA is in it, how many how much percentage of the terpene profiles is in it. Like, we have everything, and
Well,
even if it's not on the packaging, you can,
yes.
like, if it's legal cannabis, it's gonna have a QR code on there. The QR code, you just scan it with your phone, and you can see the testing, the testing of it, and they'll have the top like 5 terpenes that are tested on there.
Understood. And I'm glad you guys focus on that because, as you know, the medicine is in the terps. The
It's
medicine
in
is
the
in the terps.
terps. That's what
Yes.
I tell people.
Yeah.
It's
No,
all
no,
about
completely.
the terps.
Yes. And I need an enthusiastic, ambassador bartender just like you. But so my next question for you is, what is your favorite strain and why?
Okay, well, I'm a little biased. I went to THC Design, and we were like the pioneers in like sativas. Like, we have the best sativas around. There's this one sativa that's called Crescendo.
Um,
Crescendo is my favorite
uh,
sativa.
so,
It smells like an OG. It has three of the most potent indica terpenes in it. It smells like an indica. It smokes like an indica, but you're gonna get a head high. And people are like, this is an indica. It's not. No, it's a sativa. You don't get a body high from it. You get it's a straight sativa. It's not even hybrid. But
yeah.
people love that one because it's so mellow.
Okay. You're the first one to say that one. So, hey, we got a first timer. My last question for you is favorite superhero and why?
Oh shit.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't even think about it, right? Like, you don't get a lot of
Spider-Man.
opportunities.
I like
Spider
Spider-Man.
Man. Spider Man. Okay. Hey, respect. Respect. My kids love Spider Man. And so the last thing I'll ask you is tell people how they can stay in touch with you. Of course, you're doing some great things out there in California and for the cannabis community all over.
Well, if you want to get in touch with me, I'm always going to be on Instagram, Cannablog at Cannablog _ Um, And just be on the lookout. We're about to start our podcast. Hopefully by the end of the month we'll start taping. And it's gonna be called Dope Shit Only. So
Hey, definitely invite me on. You know, I want to spit that dope shit for real. I got you. I got you. I appreciate you, and all you do. Of course, when I saw you were from Louisiana, I assumed you knew the great Gary Chambers,
yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah, he did that. He did the ad. You remember the ad he did?
Of course,
The blunt.
man, monumental ad. Yes, yes, it woke a lot of people up, and you know, definitely, Gary's he's still shaking things up. So,
I love it.
well, I appreciate you, Miss West. I'll see you soon. Have
All
a
right.
good one.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. See you next time.
Okay.
So that was Miss Eva West from THC Design. Of course, she's doing a lot. Check her out sometime at Canon Blog. And of course, brings our next guest all the way from right next door, the District of Columbia. And, you know, before we start, I want to say, give DC their statehood, y'all. What's going on? What's going on?
That's right, Councilman. What's going on, man? Good to be with you.
Yes, yes. You know, of course, a lot of people know you. Your household name in the DMV area. But for some people who don't know you, you know, tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Markus Batchelor. I am first and foremost born and raised in the District of Columbia, the soon-to-be 51st state, and am an organizer, an activist, a former elected official. I spent 6 years in office here in D.C., first as an advisory neighborhood commissioner, and then as the Ward 8 rep and vice president of the Board of Education. And currently am also the deputy director for leadership programs at People for the American Way, which is a national voting rights and civil liberties organization that works with folks across all 50 states and the District of Columbia to secure our democracy and fight for our freedoms against far-right attacks. So obviously that work's been plenty over the last few years, but that's what I'm really grateful to be able to be doing now. Yeah.
Of course, and you know, Marcus, you've done so much in your young career, right? And so one of the things I wanted to ask is, like, you know, how old were you when you first decided to get into public service?
Well, I guess it all depends. I mean, I got the opportunity at a really young age to be involved civically, which I think is kind of the prerequisite to elected office, right? Being an involved and engaged member of your community. And so I guess around high school was the time when I got plenty of opportunities, you know, from adults and mentors in my neighborhood to be involved in, you know, campaigns for candidates that I was passionate about, local community organizations, like my local Democratic Party. Shout out to the Ward 8 Democrats. I got involved there when I was 15, 16 years old, and I'm still a very active member. I also got to join organizations like the Marion Barry Youth Leadership Institute when I was in high school and become DC's youth mayor. So really was in a lot of spaces that taught me not just a passion for kind of government and public service, but also a value and love of community. And so got involved in high school and then ran for office for the first time when I was 21. So I ran against an incumbent for a seat on the Advisory Neighborhood Commission when I was 21 and won in a very narrow race there. And then 2 years later, also beat an incumbent in a very narrow three-way race for the Board of Education. So I got elected to the ANC when I was 21 and to the school board, to the Board of Education as its youngest ever elected member at 23.
Oh, wow. Hey, for sure. And how old are you now? You still look like 21.
Yeah, I am 3 weeks shy of 30 years old. So I turned 30 on February 3rd.
Happy early 30th, man.
Yeah. So pretty eventful 20s, but super grateful for all the opportunities I got to be involved early, and for people to just push me and see that I had a passion and a talent for it, and really creating space for me to be involved is invaluable. So I'm really excited about that.
One of the things you mentioned, people are familiar with what the Board of Education does. Some of the people aren't familiar with what an ANC commissioner is.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what is the role of the ANC And what are some of their functions?
Yeah, so the Advisory Neighborhood Commission, or the ANC in DC, is our most hyperlocal form of government. So whereas a council member on the DC Council might represent about 80 to 90,000 residents in the city, an Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner represents about 2,000 of their neighbors immediately around them. Unlike kind of a city council, the ANCs are kind of what they say, they're advisory. So they are folks elected from the grassroots and communities who advise folks like the mayor and the city council on how to best improve quality of life. So your ANCs are dealing with, public safety concerns. They're dealing with development deals and community benefits agreements that go along with them. They're dealing with liquor licensing and, all of those things that you're touched by in terms of government's role, that you're touched by most frequently. The ANCs really play a frontline role in making sure that folks at the neighborhood level have what they need. It's unpaid and doesn't come with a very large budget, so it does force you to be creative. And was really a pretty interesting training ground for me as I begin to matriculate through elected office, because it forces you to be creative, to galvanize your neighbors around issues that some people might not, necessarily care about, and just to be in touch with your neighbors in a more intimate way, and your constituents in a more intimate way than you otherwise would if you're representing a larger group of people. Yeah.
And that's one of the things you mentioned, was how you had to be creative, right? And so for me, I'm someone who, long before being a council member, I was doing community work. And a lot of the work didn't come at a big tab or anything. It was because it was truly community, where you got the community to buy in.
That's
hey,
right.
I want to do to this to the community. Oh, I'll give you 100 turkeys. I'll give you 100 coats. You know what I mean? And so that's where it really starts, that community. And then, people saying we should do this more often. Let's do this every 2 months. Let's do this every month. Let's do this as much as we can, and so I think that was part of the being creative, right? Like, you really had to go out and meet your community outside of just the voters. You had to meet the business community who's gonna, give you money to do events. But it's also great for the business community, right? Because they love the good PR, and some of them aren't connected to the community, so it gets them organically connected to the community.
Yeah, no, that's right. And in that way, you're building community, right? You're linking folks to, sources of opportunity that otherwise wouldn't exist, right? You're building a network of people who can support each other, right? Kind of outside of the broader networks or even the general funding streams of government. And then, I say some of the best elected officials in our city have been advisory neighborhood commissioners before, because they get to other spaces and realize that we're operating a $20 billion budget, right? Which is more than, some states, a lot of states, right, have to operate on. And then say, well, we can do so much more with the resources we have, because we see what's possible with very little. And so, that hyperlocal works really good. Yeah.
Of course. And I think that one of the things I'm most excited about, right? So most people are like, man, you could have ran for delegate, you could have ran for this, you could have ran for that. But I was most excited to run in my hometown that I grew up in, right? To inspire people, that I've known the longest, that were apolitical, to care about things.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's inspirational when you see somebody who said they're not going to vote ever, and they care about an issue so much now, just because of you, really just putting this issue on the forefront. Right. And
that's right. That's right. I mean, my uncle, who, I've been on the ballot 5 times. And my uncle has only voted for me the last 2, but it was because, right, it took somebody like me, even his nephew, right, to motivate him to even get engaged. And so you're right, when you're able to bring people along, even if it takes a little time, even if those people are your uncle, right, that even if it takes a little time, right, those people do see the value in it, and they do see change being made. That does make all the difference. And like you, right, I grew up in Congress Heights. And so both on the Advisory Neighborhood Commission and on the school board, I represented the neighborhood I grew up in. And on the ANC, represented my mom and kind of neighbors that I grew up with. And so, that does add an extra value to it, and it makes you feel closer to the work, and the work becomes more personal. And that's when you get, I think, the best result from your work too. Yeah.
Well, question. Of course, this is me just being ignorant. Do you guys have student members of the board?
Yeah, we do. We have. When I was on the board, there were 2 student members. There are now 4, and they also now. And I'm really proud of the Board of Education, because even since I've been on, has become such an important voice, not just for students, not just for families and educators, but for students in particular. So we've doubled the amount of our student members on the board, and those student members now get to vote, which wasn't a thing.
Do they get to vote on everything? Because that's what we need to know. Is it 100% voting rights?
Yeah, they get to vote on every resolution, and for every resolution that the board introduces, our student members also lead a student advisory committee, which is a broader group of students who meet regularly to advise the board on the work. And every resolution that comes before the Board of Education actually has a statement from the student advisory committee explaining whether they agree or disagree with the resolution. So giving context even to the work that we're doing on behalf of students from students. I mean, that's one of the major changes on the board I'm really excited about. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, and just for the fact of voting, because I know in Prince George is following that for an issue. They had a lot of speaking power, but then when it came to budget issues or anything related to the budget, and I think it was one other thing, but it was mainly the budget. They couldn't vote. And I'm like, well, wouldn't you want this intelligent, member of the student body that was, elected by a majority of their peers to be able to have a voice on, how the dollars are being, doled out. And, the thought is like, I think that just tells, students that they should be involved, but they're not smart enough to, handle the money, right? And I don't think that's the case, right? Like I think that they know a lot of the needs, right? I think that they should be able to speak to them.
Yeah. No, firsthand. I'll tell you, some of the most insightful thoughts and some of the most thought-provoking conversations over my course of the board, over my course of tenure on the board. A lot of those were introduced by our student members, right? They are the ones who are closest to the classroom, right? That quite frankly, they have the most to lose if we make bad decisions at the board, and the most to gain if we really lean in and innovate in the way that they're asking us to. And so what you realize over time is that it's more high stakes for them than any of us there, and they take it as seriously as they should. And so, I think our student members have been great over the years, and I think that that's led to the type of increased voice that they've gotten on the board, because head and shoulders, they're just super smart, super insightful, and they'll demand what they want, which is really good. And that perspective as a student, quite frankly, was one of the reasons I decided to run for the board in the first place too, because I wasn't a classroom teacher. I worked in youth development and worked with families on the ground in Ward 8, particularly some of our hardest to serve families. And so had kind of a philosophy about what schools could do to better serve families and better serve communities. But a lot of the insight that I had about kind of some of the gaps that could be filled in the education system came from my perspective as a student. I ran when I was 23, so I wasn't that far removed from the classroom, understood what experiences worked for me, which ones didn't. And that, I think that lends a lot to how we make our classrooms better for the students that are in those classrooms right now. Yeah.
Well, I had, of course, there's really 2 questions. Mm-hmm. One question was to better understand how your school board is structured. Mm-hmm. The first one is, are they all elected, and are they elected to specific wards or district? Are there any at large? Do people get appointed by the mayor, if there's vacancies? And then my other question to you would be, during your tenure on the school board, what would be some of the highlights? What are some of the things that you want to champion?
Yeah.
So
yeah, so I'll be really quick with the first question, because I think our system of public education in DC is one of the most complicated in the country, but I'll try to make it brief. So the Board of Education is it consists of I guess we are now at 13 members total. So 8 members elected from each of the 8 wards, an at-large member, and now 4 student members. The elected ward members and the at-large member are elected popularly. Obviously from the residents of their ward, and then citywide for that one set-aside seat. And then student members are appointed by members of the board through a pretty rigorous application process. So we get, the board gets over 100 applications from students across all 8 wards in the city every year, in a pretty competitive process to be student member. And then we select student member, but then all the students who apply, we also invite to be a part of the student advisory committee. So that's the way the board's structured. The power it has, though, is very limited, separate from kind of what people think of as a traditional school board. So whereas you might think that the state board of education in DC has control over our public schools, the budget, and most of that, it really doesn't. It has control over statewide education policy. How one of my predecessors put it, kind of what teachers teach and what students learn is the purview of the State Board of Education. So we set education policy. Everything else is run, kind of the day-to-day function of the system is run by the mayor and the folks she appoints, the chancellor of DC Public Schools, the deputy mayor for education, and the state superintendent of education, which also has a role in statewide education policy. So that's kind of how the board functions, kind of.
That's complex. Hey, yeah. But he gave you the Reader's Digest version.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the board is the only elected body, the only popularly elected body in that whole kind of hodgepodge of education officials. Everybody else is appointed by the mayor and primarily works for the mayor. Which makes oversight more difficult, which makes accountability more difficult in our system, but which makes the role of the state board so important. That because I was one of the popularly elected members, that we had a mandate to stand up for families, and we took that role seriously and made the board a hub for conversations and issues that people weren't getting addressed in the mayor's office or at central office, and it made a difference. And I guess rolling into kind of what I was most proud of as a member of the board, one of those issues was an issue around community schools. So like I said, a lot of my experience that motivated me to run for the board was shaped by my academic experience, being in schools that were nurturing, that were challenging, that didn't necessarily have metal detectors at the doors, where there was a sense of safety, but we didn't feel like we were the threat. Where there were robust after-school programs, where students had their individual needs met, where families felt engaged, where the community felt a part of shaping the experience that was happening inside the building. And so because I had that experience for me, right, in my neighborhood where I came from, I knew that was possible for all the students who I was representing as well. So community schools fed right into that model, that schools should not just be hubs for high quality instruction, which they should, but they should also be hubs for the things that students and families and communities need to be successful, which means that, community schools have a full-time staff person that coordinates after-school programs and wellness programs. They have resources to open a food pantry if families are in need, or buy a washer and dryer for the building if students need uniforms cleaned, or or be able to bring partners in who provide academic supports or health and wellness classes, those things that we know are essential in the long term to academic success for students. When I first came on the board, there were very few community schools in the city, but we knew it was a working model around the country. And so I pushed really hard to have the mayor commit and really follow through with her promise to double the amount of community schools in the city by the end of her first term, and to commit long term in a way that every student could enjoy those types of supports in the schools that they call home. And so fast forward 6 years down the line, 2 years after I left the board, we are now investing in a real way in community schools, in no small part because of the community of advocates that joined me in pushing for that change. So schools that and I know folks in the area are familiar, schools like Ballou High School and Anacostia High School are now community schools with full-time staff members and separate budgets to provide those non-academic and sometimes academic supports, extra academic supports that students need to be successful. And so look it up. It's called the DC Public Schools Connected Schools Model. They didn't call it community schools, but it's the same thing. It's the DCPS Connected Schools Model, and it's operating in over a dozen schools around the city right now. So I'm really proud that we were able to push the envelope on that and really have the city invest in it in a real way. And I know long term it's also going to improve conditions and improve outcomes for our students that have been hardest to serve historically.
Hey, for sure. Definitely check that out. I'm gonna look more into it.
Yeah.
I know that I've been a big proponent of community schools, and I've been preaching, we need more of it because schools are playing the roles that churches used to play. Right. Not that is no longer important, but the fact that that sense of community, and you should have these wraparound services and these wellness services right there at the school.
That's right.
And one other thing I wanted to highlight that is important is, when you got elected, you just became an elected advocate.
That's right.
No longer stopped advocating.
That's right.
There's people that have said to me, once I got elected, I'm no longer an advocate.
Right.
I'm the government, which is the business, right? I'm representing the people. But of course, I remember that there are more people than there are politicians, and people votes. People vote. Governments do not.
That's right.
Right, and so. That's just me getting on my soapbox.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, and nothing gets done. And quite frankly, I mean, being inside government, you also understand very quickly, or you get to know very quickly, that nothing gets done without popular support in government. There's just no motivation, right? The government is almost an institution designed to protect the status quo, and unless folks lean in and even pressure the most well-intentioned public officials to do the hard work, to break down the systems that are barriers to progress, there's just not an institutional motivation to do it. Which is why we need good people who have experiences in the best way to serve marginalized people, to be in those spaces, because they know how to not just kind of get in and allocate dollars a different way, but understand how to restructure systems so that they don't so that they are designed in a way that adversely impact the people who need to be helped the most.
I agree with that. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, I'm working on a few things here as far as diversity, making sure we highlight different diversity, making sure we provide services to the entire community, not just parts of the community, but just highlighting alternative housing, what can be further tenant protections, and one of those being rent stabilization. So you might be familiar, I'm sure you are. DC has a lot more protections. Are you in favor of rent stabilization? Are you a proponent? We're having a symposium coming up, so I'd love to invite you. It's actually next week for MLK weekend, but
nice.
Either way, I just want to know what's your position on it.
Yeah, so I ran for the DC Council at large in 2020, and in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. So as you can imagine, in a city like DC, where housing was already unaffordable before the pandemic, there was a lot of conversation about housing affordability, and especially about keeping low-income folks and folks who have been here in the city a long time, especially those who were born and raised here, keeping those folks in the city long-term by stabilizing out of control housing market, that's just getting more and more expensive. I'm in support of rent control. You would think that DC would have among the most progressive rent control policies in the country, but surprisingly, it doesn't. Our rent control policy only covers units that were built and I believe not renovated substantially before 1975. So is really only covering a very small amount of units in our city right now.
What percentage would you think of like rental units?
Oh gosh. I mean, yeah, very small. I mean, 10% might be generous, you know. It's a very small percentage of our total housing units. But I do think that there's a place for sure a more progressive rent control policy in DC, moving those years up for sure, and figuring out right how to stabilize it long term for units right that aren't that haven't been unimproved for 40 years. But I think that's only one toolbox in the kind of a total kit to make sure people have affordable housing. Yeah.
No. I mean, you're hitting the spot, and the good to know that you're an advocate for it, and you know that there's something because one of the things that I believe is definitely moving the years up, you know, but also I think that one of the things I've seen in Tacoma Park is if you want to still go that route, the new building exemption, right? And so for like 5 years they'll be exempted, you know, from the stabilized percentage, and you know that's good for businesses because they can set the market rate. They can set theirs 5 years to that market rate. And I did the air quotes because it's market is imaginary,
right?
You know, tell people, but you know, the thought is like I thought that was great because I've seen other ones where go 20 years, and so if it's 20 or 25, I think what people would do is they would you know, have that property for 19 years, knock it down on the 20th, so that then wouldn't be under stabilization, you know, then start all over again. So like I think 5 years is a good amount of time because nobody could even pay off the loan to renovate in that time, you know. So yeah.
And like I said, I think just one tool in the toolkit. I think government still has a role in providing housing. Now, coming from someone who knows that government, right, can be and historically has been among the largest slumlords, right, in our city and in our country, there is a place, right, for government supported housing. There must be a place for housing in a more permanent, stable way, and in a way with dignity. Our poorest residents, right? Our residents that fall way below our annual median income, that are in that 0 to 30% range, right? There has to be a net for people so that folks aren't ending up on our streets or in more dire situations. You know, I think in DC, we have the particular misfortune of being tied to our very affluent, our market being tied to our very affluent neighbors, both in Northern Virginia and over in Prince George's County and Charles County now. And so that also dictates in a real way our market, right? Our average median income. And so we also have to grapple with just being a very affluent jurisdiction, but one that also has massive income inequalities between kind of working class and upper class folks, and between Black and white. So there has to be a way to buttress that, and a lot of it is just by creative interventions on government side, because the private sector is just not going to be able to fill the need, and will never fill the need for our poorest residents.
For sure. I mean, and you know, I believe that cooperative housing, you know, is an idea, more social housing, as you said, more government housing, better quality government housing is important. And I just want to say, don't just necessarily blame Prince George's. I heard you blame North. they got like 2 of the 3 richest counties.
That's right.
US. So in Northern Virginia, it messes up our area median income all the time. So yeah, they are to blame more so than the Prince George's, Charles County now as well. But
no, we'll definitely just put it on the folks who cannot debate on this call and just say it's all their fault. I know we got some affluent people here. I know, but the fluctuation in income. But the deep inequality is just a unique challenge that our area has, and we do have to figure out creative solutions for it, because right, the standard is not one size fit all, right? You know, 80% of the median income, right, is not affordable for tons of folks, right, in our city.
Deeply affordable.
Yeah, deeply unaffordable, right?
Yeah.
For the average person. And so we've got to think about different ways to measure our success in terms of delivering on affordable housing, but then also just generally defining it differently, and investing in it in a different way, a more urgent way, quite frankly.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, and I'm gonna talk to you more about this for sure. One of the things, I'll make sure to send you the information for the housing symposium. We're gonna have a MLK Fight for Fair Housing Symposium and Resource Fair, right here, and we're inviting people from different areas of the region, because I thought it's important to have this conversation with other stakeholders as well, to make sure that it's not just going to happen here. These tenant protections, let's make it happen, all over Maryland. And as you said, in DC, I hope some of that causes an avalanche, right? You guys, take some of that energy and momentum.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and either for necessity or for competition, right? That has to happen, right? We have to, as a region, figure out how we're going to move, and also realizing that, like, our region, or the way we defined our region in the years past, is changing, right? Because transportation access is different, right? All the people are willing to move further out from the city, right, to live and still be able to work productively in the city. I know nobody in the immediate DMV wants to realize it, but very soon Baltimore will become a very more present part of our kind of capital region. And so we have to think about, right, how we become competitive, right, how we attract as jurisdictions, how we attract the type of talent that we need for our total success. But also, if we are misaligned, right, in our approaches to providing public housing and public safety and public health, then we'll always be kind of dragging on one another. And so that collaboration early is so important. So I'm really excited that you're leaning into those conversations. Yeah,
sure. And like I said, if you have stuff, or I didn't say, if you invite me out to DC, I'll make that trip. I'm not, I'm not shy to come out to DC. I've done some work in DC. I will say that I was helping out my consulting firm. We were helping out Vincent Orange.
Okay.
Last election. So, Vincent, he taught me some things, and we was out beating the pavement. Not to say I'm endorsing Vincent, but Vincent, he definitely paid his bills.
Yeah, so, for sure. I bet. Yeah, for sure.
But what I wanted to ask you is, and probably everybody knows, you've been a fixture. What's next? Are you going to run for something? DC has elections all the time. As I found out, elections are cutthroat.
Right, all the time. All the time.
What is next? What is next?
Yeah, so I guess everybody says this. I mean, I guess we'll see. I mean, I
had to ask you that question.
But I'll say I would love to run again for office. I think that while campaigns aren't my favorite, the work in public service is. I like to solve tough problems. I like to bring different voices together to really get things done. And I think in the campaigns that I've run in the past, I think we've demonstrated that in a way that is important, right, in the discourse in our politics, but that can also has the potential to be transformative. And so I think there are a lot of people committed to that. So we'll see. I definitely want to run again. When though is up in the air. But
I will say, and don't take this lightly, right? So I think the only time that I personally been in the same space as you was, I think that there was a motorcade or something that happened with the Dems and a bunch of the candidates, and I think we ended at like a barbecue spot or something, right? I don't know that sounds familiar. It was this past election. And so, like, I never personally met you, but I've been following you on Instagram, following you on Facebook. Someone who knows me knows that I've only been elected for a year, but I've been passionate, definitely been, serving the public. I can say that literally watching you campaign and watching you do the work, inspired me, right? Inspired me to be confident and everything like that, because the thought is a lot of people don't understand the value of seeing people that, look like you, how much value that has, right? Like, to think like, oh yeah, I could do this. I could be young, you know what I mean? And like, on the psyche of a young person being in politics, just seeing young people out there, Trey, Trey. So there's several young people, and many Maryland people. Edward Burrows, you know what I mean. Like, so I'm sure you know him as well. I believe you guys are frat brothers, but Zach, you know what I mean. So just a lot of people just being young and doing things.
Yeah, no, well, we're digging from the same well. I mean, literally, I ran for the first time in 2014, but watching, like you said, folks like David Murray and Ed Burrows do it in the county back in like 2010 and 2012 was really inspiring for me. Trayon entered politics just a few years before I did, right in my ward, and so it was a big inspiration to me. Nate Bennett Fleming, who ran for shadow representative, that was one of the first campaigns I was on. He was 26 at the time, running for a citywide office. And so you're right. I mean, just like you, right, seeing folks from similar experiences and from similar places do those things really inspire me too. So it all really does ripple. It waterfalls, right, in a real different way.
But I was just to say that a person I never personally met you, but I was watching you and you inspired me, right? And it's the same thing with Marion Barry. Marion Barry, to this day, if people ask me, who is my political, who do I look up to? Marion Barry and Bernie Sanders. You know what I mean? Like, there's a bunch of other people, but those two, for sure, because they're always going to be real OGs.
They are, and yeah, definitely. I think they get a lot of credit, but she'll get more credit for really pushing the envelope on progressive politics, right? Marion in his time, right, when he didn't have to, making Washington, D.C., right, what people called the gayest city in America, when even, right, Black clergy and quite frankly, a large swath of like Black people in the city weren't as progressive on the issue. And obviously, like, we know what Bernie Sanders did for the party and, on issues like healthcare and fair wages. So, obviously Marion creating a Black middle class.
That's what we say, the most thriving Black middle class. We got to mention that.
Yeah, exactly.
And for anybody to check out his autobiography, check that out, man.
Yes. And The 9 Lives of Marion Barry, which is a very good documentary that if you haven't seen it, definitely.
I hadn't seen that one. 9 Lives of Marion Barry. I got to check that out.
Yes, please.
Well, before I get you out of here, I wanted to ask you a couple rapid questions for anybody. We've seen people over politics, just a few ones not as serious. My first question for you is, would you give, if you had the power, if you could vote, would you give 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote in local elections?
I would. I supported it during my campaign in 2020 and pledged to be a vote for it. If I got elected, I was just a few votes short, but if I ever get the opportunity, we'll also vote for it. And hopefully we'll put it on the ballot sometime soon. And if given the opportunity, we'll also vote for it there.
I love to see it. My next question is favorite superhero and why? This one tells a lot about, your character and,
man.
Absolutely.
Gosh.
A lot of people never expect it either. They never expect this question.
Yeah. I guess the Black Panther. I guess for all the obvious reasons that other folks would name, but also because the Black Panther, like, it's kind of an open seat. You can kind of run to be, if you got the skill and the talent, you can kind of run to be the Black Panther, which I appreciate. It's like a democratic institution a little bit, which also is a fun side thought for me.
I never looked at it that way, but you bring up a good point.
Yeah.
And my last question was, if there was one book you could recommend, that you've read recently, or ever. Mm-hmm. What is that? What is that piece of literature?
Yeah, I'll think of some stuff I read recently. I'm always looking for that. Cast by Isabel Wilkerson was a really powerful read that I read within the last year, which just kind of zooms out, because I think we think about racism and kind of all of these things in very interpersonal and intimate ways, but just zooming out and realizing just kind of the structure of this system, right, and how it took so much time to build up and how it's going to take just as much effort to break that system down, because it's systemic, it's psychological, right, it's social. And so that book really does, I think, dive deep, and it's a really good one. Same with the 1619 Project with the New York Times. I listened to the podcast, and I've got the book downloaded for a deeper dive. But that one was really good too.
Hey, those are some great recommendations. I've actually heard of both.
Nice.
So definitely on my list of things to check out. And, you know, for people who want to stay connected or would like to reach out to you, you know, tell them how to do that.
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on social media, very active on Twitter, my friends would say. And all of that is at Markus for DC, MarkusFor DC. And yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good way to be in touch. I monitor all of those myself, probably too frequently. And so really excited to have conversations with folks and include folks in our work. In terms of kind of what I do on a day-to-day at People for the American Way, there's plenty of work to be done to defend our democracy. I'm saying that right on at least as we're recording, right, in the aftermath of the anniversary of January 6th. And so there's plenty of work to do to build our democracy, and to really make it freer and fairer for all of us, make sure more folks are included. So please do go to pfaw.org, become a member, and engage with us both here and around the country as we're doing that work to defend our democracy.
And you're in DC, right? You know, so maybe we need to vote for you for Speaker of the House.
No, yeah, well, apparently, I mean, I think they're on like the 14th, 15th ballot. So I think I told him I'd be open to being on like the 20th ballot. So I might have to slide over to the Capitol a little later.
Well, let him know I can't pay for you, brother. Let him know.
I appreciate it.
All right, well, I'll see you soon, Markus. I appreciate you joining, and like I said, I'll send over the invites. But yeah, stay connected.
Absolutely, Martin, my brother. Thank you so much. Anything I can do to support, you know, I'm just a couple of cities over, so please let me know.
For sure.
All right,
sure. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, brother.
For sure. Bye.
That was another episode of People Over Politics, the first one of the new year. So it's a lot to be excited about. We're moving on to 2023, guys. I hope 2022 was fabulous. And if it wasn't, so what? Leave it in the past. We got to move forward. And as we do move forward, let's just be conscious of putting our best foot forward, and doing our best for others. See you later. See you next time.